You ever have one of those moments that splits your life into two clear halves? Before and after? Yeah, mine happened under the flashing lights of a rock concert, surrounded by screaming teenagers. Funny place for your life to unravel, right? It all started innocently enough. My daughter, Emily, had begged for months to go to this concert. It was her absolute favorite band, some pop rock group whose posters covered every square inch of her bedroom. I wasn't exactly thrilled about spending 3 hours with screaming fans, but seeing her smile was worth every discomfort. So we went. The venue was packed, thousands of people, the air vibrating with excitement and youthful energy. Emily was ecstatic, bouncing on her toes, shouting lyrics louder than anyone around. I stood slightly behind, doing the protective dad thing, keeping a watchful eye. And then it happened. In the sea of faces, bathed in flickering blue and purple stage lights, I spotted my wife, Jenna. At first, I smiled, thinking it was a happy coincidence. Maybe she decided to surprise us. But my smile froze as I realized she wasn't alone. Next to her stood a tall, athletic man, his arm casually draped around her shoulder. My heart stumbled painfully in my chest. I forced myself to stay calm. Perhaps it was innocent, a misunderstanding. They were friends, colleagues, something harmless. But even as I clung desperately to hope, my gut told me a different story. Jenna laughed at something he whispered, tilting her head in that familiar way she used to flirt with me. The familiarity of that gesture hit me harder than anything else. My stomach churned, my vision narrowed. I felt suddenly disconnected from reality, trapped in a slow-motion nightmare. The music pounded around me, louder, more distorted than before. I watched them carefully, unnoticed in the shadow of the crowd. The man leaned in again, and Jenna laughed, tossing her hair back playfully. Then, to my disbelief, she reached up and touched his face in a gesture so intimate it felt like a dagger straight into my chest. I gripped the rail in front of me, knuckles turning white. Part of me wanted to storm over there, demand answers, make a scene. But another, more calculating part of me held back. I needed to know more, needed to understand exactly how deep this betrayal went. When the concert finally ended, I guided Emily gently through the crowd, heart heavy but face neutral. Jenna was nowhere to be seen. As we stepped out into the night, I quietly resolved to uncover the truth, no matter how painful. That night, lying awake in bed next to Jenna, who had slipped in hours later without explanation, pretending everything was normal, I decided I wouldn't react hastily. No shouting, no immediate accusations. Instead, I would carefully and methodically uncover everything she'd been hiding from me. That was the night I chose clarity over comfort, truth over ignorance. That was the night my life changed forever. And it all began because of one accidental glance across a crowded concert hall. The morning after the concert, I woke up feeling like I'd aged 10 years overnight. Sunlight streamed into the bedroom, casting gentle patterns on the walls, deceptively peaceful for the turmoil raging inside me. Jenna lay sleeping soundly beside me, completely unaware that her secret had begun to unravel. I carefully slid out of bed, not wanting to wake her. I needed space to think clearly, to plan my next moves. Heading downstairs, I poured myself a strong cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, mind racing through every scenario. I kept replaying the image of her at the concert, laughing, touching another man's face. The intimacy of the gesture haunted me. How long had this been happening right under my nose? How had I missed every single clue? After a few deep breaths, I decided I had to approach this logically. Emotion would cloud my judgment, and impulsive reactions would give her room to manipulate the narrative. I needed facts, hard, undeniable facts. Over the following days, I subtly began paying closer attention to Jenna's routine. Things I'd previously ignored started glaring at me. Her phone habits were particularly suspicious. She kept it face down on the table, took it everywhere, even into the bathroom, and frequently turned off notifications. Little things that individually meant nothing but, together, spoke volumes. I made mental notes of every detail. Late-night texting sessions, frequent trips to meet friends, and vague explanations when I asked simple questions. My heart broke a little more each time I watched her effortlessly spin lies, maintaining perfect eye contact while smiling gently. A part of me still fought against believing it fully. We had shared over 15 years together, raising our daughter, building a home. Could she really betray all that? But deep inside, I knew denial was pointless. I decided to dig deeper. One evening, Jenna announced she had a girls' night out, a familiar excuse she'd used frequently in recent months. I nodded casually, smiling, and wished her fun. As soon as her car pulled out of the driveway, I felt adrenaline surge through my veins. That night, I began my quiet investigation. First, I carefully checked our shared home computer, hoping for clues left behind in her digital footprint. There wasn't much. She was cautious, but small breadcrumbs still emerged. An email notification from an unfamiliar restaurant reservation site, some cryptic messages referencing next time, and receipts from shops I'd never seen her frequent. My curiosity deepened into a determined quest for truth. The following day, I decided to take a more direct approach. I installed a discreet tracking app on her car and phone, something I'd never dreamed of doing before, feeling simultaneously guilty and justified. The idea of spying on my own wife was repulsive, but my desperation to understand the scope of her deception pushed me onward. Within days, patterns started emerging. Regular visits to a specific upscale neighborhood, stops at restaurants I'd never visited, and frequent returns to the same downtown office building, a place where she had no legitimate reason to be. Each piece of data etched further into the growing mosaic of betrayal. Still, I didn't confront her. Each day tested my patience and sanity, but I knew impulsiveness would only give her an advantage. My goal wasn't merely confrontation, it was clarity. I needed indisputable evidence before taking my next step. Only then could I regain control of a situation spiraling rapidly beyond my grasp. Every night, lying beside Jenna became an exercise in restraint. I listened to her steady breathing, wondering how she'd managed to compartmentalize her deceit so effortlessly. Did she feel no guilt, no hesitation? Weeks passed this way, quietly collecting evidence, piecing together her double life. My heart was heavy, yet my resolve strengthened daily. Finally, I understood something vital. I wasn't just fighting for the truth. I was fighting for my dignity, my future, and my daughter's stability. In the solitude of those quiet evenings, I crafted a careful, methodical plan. I knew the path forward would be painful, yet I also recognized that real healing could begin only once the truth was fully exposed. And so, I continued my silent vigilance, waiting patiently, quietly gathering clues. Because soon I would have everything I needed. Jenna's secrets could not remain hidden forever, and when the time came, she would face consequences she'd never imagined. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was seeking justice. And every secret I uncovered brought me closer to reclaiming my life and dignity. You never think you'll be the guy quietly tracking his own wife's car location from his phone while pretending to laugh at a sitcom beside her. But here I was living in two realities. One where I was the loving husband and father who showed up for dinners, school events, and Saturday morning pancakes. And the other where I was methodically mapping out my wife's deception like some private investigator in a B-list crime drama. Every ping from her GPS told a deeper story. She wasn't going to her mother's house. She wasn't meeting her friends for yoga. The places she went were too specific, too consistent. Tuesday nights? The same boutique hotel downtown. Thursday afternoons? The same office building where, apparently, she didn't work but visited often enough to have a reserved parking spot. I started documenting everything: dates, times, durations, addresses. I built a spreadsheet like it was a financial audit. Cold, clean, unarguable. I wanted proof so sharp it could cut through any excuse. But what broke me more than her betrayal was how easily she carried on at home. She'd come back from these appointments, smiling, chatting with Emily about school projects, kissing me goodnight like nothing was wrong. The performance was flawless. Oscar-worthy. And I played along. Not because I was weak, but because I was building a storm she wouldn't see coming. One night, Jenna was in the shower and her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I hesitated. I hated myself for what I was about to do, but I picked it up. No passcode rookie mistake. What I found wasn't graphic. No explicit messages, no scandalous photos. But that made it worse. It was all emotional. Dozens of texts to the same contact saved as M. Charming, coded, affectionate. Inside jokes. Compliments. Schedules carefully worked around our family life. It was a relationship built in the shadows, quiet, coordinated, and devastating. The worst message? Can't wait to just be with you. No more hiding. That one stuck like a fishbone in my throat. It meant this wasn't just some fling. It wasn't physical curiosity or a midlife crisis thrill. She was invested. She was planning something. Possibly an exit. That's when fear crept in. Was she getting ready to leave me? Take Emily? Empty our accounts? The betrayal was bad enough, but the idea that she might be preparing to burn everything down and walk away made my blood go cold. I needed more than digital proof. I needed eyes. So I called in help. A friend of mine, Marcus, worked in private security, ex-military, now a clean-cut guy running a background check firm. I trusted him. We met at a coffee shop across town. I need you to follow someone, I said. Discreetly. He raised an eyebrow. Wife. I nodded. No judgment, man. What are we looking for? Where she goes? Who she meets? Anything that can't be explained by book club and yoga. He nodded again. You'll have photos in 2 weeks. And he delivered. I remember the night the first batch came in. I sat in my car in the driveway, engine off, just staring at the envelope. Inside, a series of photos so painfully clear they made me nauseous. Jenna meeting him, the same man from the concert. The one with the smug smile and 2 white teeth. Restaurant dinners. Long walks in a park far from our home. Hand-holding. The same look in her eyes she used to give me a decade ago. Marcus didn't just snap photos. He gave me a report complete with timestamps, notes on body language, duration of each encounter. It was all there. And yet, I didn't cry. I just sat there hollowed out. Not shocked, because some part of me had already accepted it, but exhausted. Like watching a slow building fire finally reach the house and knowing you have no hose. At that moment everything became clear. There was no more room for doubt. No benefit of it either. Jenna had chosen her path. And now I needed to decide what mine would be. But I wasn't going to confront her yet. Not even with a folder full of betrayal. No, that wasn't the kind of ending I wanted. I was going to turn this into a lesson, one she would never forget. A quiet, elegant reckoning. One that would make her realize too late what she'd thrown away. Because she had built a fantasy. And I was about to bring her back to reality on my terms. The next morning, I looked at her across the breakfast table, her eyes bright, asking if I could pick up milk on the way home. I smiled. Of course. Let the game begin. They say knowledge is power. And I was beginning to learn that when you're betrayed, you don't just study the traitor, you study who they betrayed you with. Because as painful as it was to admit, this wasn't just about Jenna anymore. It was also about him, the man who thought he could casually step into my life and dismantle it from the inside. So I started digging. First, I took the information Marcus had gathered, the name, the places, the vehicle plates, and I began my own research. His name was Daniel Cross. Clean-shaven, polished, mid-40s. Worked in real estate investment. Divorced. No kids. Lived in a sleek modern condo downtown. The type of guy who drinks espresso at 3 p.m. and thinks buying vintage whiskey makes him cultured. His online presence was curated to the point of nausea. Instagram full of motivational quotes and gym selfies. LinkedIn read like a resume on steroids, visionary, elite closer, market disruptor. The man was practically allergic to humility. But beyond the fake charm and rehearsed success, I started to notice cracks. He had a trail of former colleagues who called him manipulative, a user, the kind of guy who smiles while stabbing you in the back. Interesting. Even more interesting? A history of relationships with married women. Not rumors. Confirmed. A few online forum posts, a disgruntled ex-boyfriend's blog, even a review on a sketchy dating app. The guy had a pattern. He didn't just chase women, he hunted wives. Women with stability, homes, husbands, families. It wasn't love. It was conquest. And Jenna? She was just the next prize. That realization made something in me snap, not in rage, but in cold, focused purpose. This wasn't just about my marriage anymore. This man made sport out of breaking homes. I wasn't going to let him turn mine into another notch on his belt. But I knew direct confrontation wouldn't work. That's how he played his game, push the husband into a rage, make him look like the problem. I couldn't give him that. So I went subtle. Strategic. I created a fake profile, not to catfish him, but to observe. I joined the same social and professional circles he was in online. I tracked his networking events, his conferences, his online seminars. I followed his posts, his check-ins, his humble brags. I learned what made him tick. And eventually, I discovered his weakness, ego. This man thrived on admiration. He couldn't resist attention, couldn't ignore praise. I watched him fall over himself replying to comments from women half his age, soaking in the digital validation like it was air. It wasn't just a habit, it was a dependency. So I gave him more. Through my fake account, I started small, liking posts, dropping subtle compliments. Then questions about his expertise. He responded instantly. Within days, he was initiating conversations, offering advice, inviting me to networking groups and online chats. The man didn't even pause to verify who I was. While he talked, I listened. And I saved everything. Screenshots, audio snippets from voice chats, shared files. I wasn't looking for dirt, I was building a trap. I knew that someone this vain would eventually slip. And he did. He mentioned clients by name, violating NDAs. He bragged about using inside info to close deals. He hinted at tax tricks and loopholes that skirted legality. And all of it was now sitting in my cloud folder, timestamped and backed up 3 ways. Still, I didn't make a move. Because this wasn't just about taking him down, it was about timing. Meanwhile, at home, Jenna remained blissfully unaware. She kept playing the role. School meetings, dinners, morning routines. It was surreal, like watching a stranger act out my marriage. But I noticed something subtle in her behavior. She had started withdrawing small amounts of money. She had created a new email account. She cleared her browser history more often. She was preparing something. And I realized she wasn't just lying to me, she was planning her exit strategy. Most men would have confronted her then and there. Maybe yelled. Maybe begged. Maybe packed a bag and left. But I wasn't most men. I wasn't just going to stop her. I was going to make sure she couldn't rewrite the story when it was over. No, we just grew apart. No, he was cold and distant. No narrative that erased the truth. When the dust settled, I wanted everyone, friends, family, our daughter, her, to see it for what it was. A quiet betrayal. And a patient response. So I stayed the course. I smiled over dinner. I kissed her goodnight. I told her I loved her. And every day I worked in the background building the file, tracking the moves, learning the enemy. Because war isn't won with explosions. It's won with precision. And mine was coming. You don't build a bomb with noise. You do it in silence, in shadows, piece by piece, until one day it goes off and nobody even knows where it came from. That's exactly how I approached my revenge. I wasn't interested in explosions. No dramatic confrontations. No screaming matches in the living room. That's what she would have expected, a hot-headed reaction, something messy, emotional, and easy to twist into look how unhinged he is. No. I was going to do this the only way she wouldn't see coming. Slow, precise, surgical. By now, I had gathered more than enough evidence to destroy Jenna in court. Photos. Messages. GPS logs. Bank transactions. Audio clips. Even Marcus, who'd kept his tone neutral until now, said, "Man, she's been playing you hard." But I didn't want destruction. Not yet. I wanted dismantling. I began by creating 3 digital folders, each named innocuously family planning, property tax, and summer projects. Inside each one was a carefully curated batch of files, labeled, cross-referenced, and backed up in the cloud under encrypted names. If anything ever happened to me, those files were set to automatically forward to 3 people, my lawyer, my brother, and Jenna's boss. Yeah, I found out where she worked, her real job. Not the consulting gig she claimed. And let's just say, the HR department would be very interested in what I had on her and her little office rendezvous. I wasn't trying to get her fired. Not yet. First, I wanted her nervous. I started small, subtle moves that would seem like coincidence to her, but calculated pressure points from me. I asked casually at dinner, "Didn't you say you had a team meeting at 3 today? Your calendar said 4. Her fork paused for just a second. That half-second pause was everything I needed. Then I started leaving things slightly out of place. Her favorite necklace moved from one drawer to another. Her laptop, which she never left unattended, mysteriously ended up with a search history she didn't recognize. She started double-checking things. Asking if Emily had been on her computer. Waking up at night to check if the doors were locked. The paranoia was blooming. I didn't stop. I started getting involved more with Emily's school. Picking her up. Attending every parent meeting. Talking to her teachers. It wasn't just about parenting, it was strategy. I was becoming the constant, the reliable one. If things exploded later, I needed to make sure custody wasn't a question. I wasn't going to let Jenna take Emily and spin some daddy got distant narrative. Then came the financials. I scheduled a quiet meeting with my bank's legal team and moved half of our joint funds into a private trust in Emily's name, with me as the controlling guardian. Perfectly legal. Perfectly unnoticeable. I changed all my passwords, reworked my insurance, and transferred the house deed to a dual ownership clause, again, perfectly legal. She would never see the trap until it snapped shut. Meanwhile, I started prepping allies. Marcus agreed to testify if needed. I told my brother bits and pieces, just enough to ensure that if Jenna ever tried to manipulate the family narrative, there'd be resistance. I even started seeing a therapist, documenting my experience from a mental health angle with dates, notes, and a traceable record. Every move I made had a paper trail. Every step was built to be verifiable. And the best part? Jenna still had no idea. She kept texting him. I watched their messages pour in. Plans for a weekend trip. Talk of next year, maybe making it official. He even called her my partner in crime. The irony wasn't lost on me. I considered reaching out to him, a quick message, a warning shot. But no, that wasn't the point. This wasn't about getting him to stop. This was about letting him fall with her. Because the way I saw it, this wasn't just cheating. This was a conspiracy, two adults making decisions that affected an innocent child, a marriage, a family. And I wasn't going to shout at them. I was going to put them in a position where they'd have to explain themselves publicly. The dinner party idea came later. But in this phase, all I wanted was control. Quiet, total, undeniable control. I didn't want to scream, "You ruined us." I wanted her to look around one day and realize everything she thought she had, stability, privacy, safety, was slipping right through her fingers. That realization would hurt more than any outburst ever could. Because revenge isn't about noise. It's about silence that suffocates. And I had become very, very good at being silent. Revenge at its most satisfying is not about volume. It's about presentation, delivery, timing. The right moment, the right place, the right audience. And now, after weeks of silent prep, I was finally ready for the next phase, exposure. But not with a tantrum. With a toast. The idea came to me one night while watching Jenna pour herself a second glass of wine. She laughed at something on her phone, probably a text from M, and for a brief moment, I realized something critical. She had absolutely no idea she was standing in the middle of a trap. That kind of arrogance? It deserved a stage. So I began planning the dinner party. I framed it as a celebration, an anniversary of sorts. 15 years married, I said, smiling as I brought it up one morning over coffee. We should do something special. Jenna beamed. That's actually sweet, she said, almost surprised. We picked a date 3 weeks out. I offered to handle the planning. You've been so busy with work, I said, placing a hand on hers. She looked touched. I'm sure part of her thought, maybe he's finally making an effort again. In a way, I was. I rented a cozy private dining space in an upscale restaurant downtown. Invited close friends. 2 couples from Jenna's side. My brother and his wife. Even her boss and a few coworkers, just enough to make it social, intimate, and dangerous. I timed the invitations carefully. Sent out reminders. Called it a gratitude dinner. No one suspected anything. Not even Jenna. She went shopping the week before. Bought a new dress. Booked a salon appointment. The illusion was working perfectly. Meanwhile, I spent my nights reviewing everything I collected. Screenshots, transaction logs, GPS data, photographs, messages between her and Daniel. I compiled it all into a single, beautifully organized slideshow presentation. Password protected on a sleek tablet I kept locked in my briefcase. I wasn't planning to throw it on the screen like some kind of soap opera twist. No. I just needed it ready. Because this night wasn't about evidence. It was about collapse. The evening arrived. Jenna looked radiant. And that stung. Because for a moment I remembered the version of her I used to love. The one who once lit up when I walked in the room. Now she glowed for someone else. Or maybe for herself. Either way, I let that feeling pass. There was work to do. The guests arrived gradually, all dressed smart, relaxed, full of wine and compliments. Laughter filled the room. Jenna was in her element, joking, charming, pouring wine like nothing in her world could possibly fall apart. And then I stood up. I tapped my glass gently and smiled. First, I began, thank you all for coming. Jenna and I, 15 years together, haven't always done a great job celebrating milestones. Life gets in the way. But tonight, I wanted to pause. To appreciate. I glanced at her. She smiled, eyes glistening with just a touch of emotion. I wanted to talk, I continued, about truth. About honesty. About the things we build together. A marriage, a home, a life. About how fragile those things can be when even one person decides their happiness matters more than their loyalty. There was a subtle shift in the room. A tightening. Jenna's smile faltered just slightly. I kept going slowly, steadily. And about what it means to see clearly. To take off the rose-colored glasses. To watch silently as someone chips away at your trust, one text at a time. Her wine glass froze midway to her lips. I didn't say her name. I didn't name him either. I didn't need to. Everyone felt it. I turned to face the room fully. So tonight isn't just a celebration. It's a turning point. And sometimes turning points come with choices. Silence. Then I looked directly at Jenna. I've made mine. And I sat down. It was like dropping a glass on a marble floor. You don't hear the break right away, but you feel it. Everyone sat still, stunned, processing. Jenna's face drained of color. Her eyes darted around the room. She opened her mouth once, then closed it. Then again. What is this? She finally whispered, barely audible. But I didn't respond. I poured myself a drink. She excused herself moments later. Went to the restroom. Stayed there for almost 10 minutes. When she returned, her face was composed, but her hands trembled as she reached for her purse. The party continued. But the air had changed. The room felt colder. The laughter quieter. My brother gave me a long, slow nod. Her boss looked confused. Her friends exchanged awkward glances. The facade cracked, and under it, something very real began to bleed through. And I hadn't even shown anyone a single piece of proof. Because the best exposure doesn't come from evidence. It comes from watching someone crumble under the weight of their own lie. And that night, she began to crumble. After the dinner party, the silence between Jenna and me wasn't just tense, it was weaponized. She didn't bring it up that night. Neither did I. But the next morning, she was different. Stiffer. Quieter. She sipped her coffee like it might explode in her hands. I read the news on my phone and pretended not to notice. But I noticed everything. She spent the day at home, first time in a while. She canceled her lunch with Kate, a friend I now knew didn't exist. She spent hours cleaning things that were already clean. Rearranged the bookshelves. Sorted the spices alphabetically. The anxiety was leaking out of her in the form of frantic normalcy. By the second day, she finally broke. It was evening. Emily was at a sleepover. We sat at opposite ends of the couch. The TV was on, but we weren't watching. Jenna muted it with the remote and turned to me slowly. What was that? She asked, her voice tight and raw. At the dinner. I didn't answer right away. I wanted the silence to linger. Then I looked at her. Calm. Focused. It was the truth, I said. Her eyes welled up, not from sadness. From panic. You're trying to humiliate me. No, I said, you've done that yourself. I just gave it context. She stood and started pacing. You're being dramatic. You could have just talked to me. We could have worked on things. That made me laugh, short, bitter. Worked on what? Your schedule with Daniel? Your lies? Your exit plan? Her jaw clenched. I don't know what you think you know, she said. I reached for my briefcase. Set it on the table. Slowly unzipped it. Pulled out the tablet. Let me help, I said. And I tapped the screen. Photo after photo. Timestamped locations. GPS records. Screenshots of messages. Voice memos. All carefully organized. I handed her the tablet. She didn't touch it. Just stared at it like it was radioactive. You were spying on me, she whispered. No, I corrected. I was documenting. There's a difference. She sat down, stunned. I remained standing. Look, she said after a pause, I didn't mean for it to go this far. It was just, it started with conversations. And I didn't know how to stop. Then you planned trips with him. Lied to her daughter. Lied to me. You didn't stop. You escalated. Tears filled her eyes, but I didn't flinch. And now what? She asked. What are you going to do? Divorce me? Ruin me? I paused. Let her sit in that question. I'm not going to ruin you, I said. You're going to do that yourself. I'm just done shielding you from it. She started to cry for real then. Head in hands, shoulders trembling. But I didn't comfort her. Not this time. I had done that for too long. I sat back down and let the silence speak. When she finally looked up, mascara streaked her cheeks, but there was something else, fear. Not just of what I'd do, but of how much control she had already lost. You said you've made your choice, she said, her voice barely audible. I have. And? I'm divorcing you, I said quietly. But not today. First, I'm taking full custody of Emily. I've already spoken to lawyers, therapists, teachers. I have every file I need. Every statement. Every record. You made your choices. And now I'm making mine. She sat there, shattered. And I walked upstairs without looking back. Because some battles aren't won with shouting. Some battles are won when the other person realizes. It's already over. The days that followed were like walking through the smoldering remains of a life I no longer recognized. Nothing was on fire anymore, but everything reeked of smoke. Jenna didn't try to apologize again. Not really. She hovered. She watched. She occasionally attempted small talk, asking if I needed anything from the store, if I wanted coffee, if I had eaten. The usual domestic rituals. But none of it felt real anymore. It was just echoes. We existed like ghosts in the same house. Same rooms, same air, but no connection. Emily sensed it. She wasn't a child anymore. At 12, she had eyes like spotlights. She asked once, "Is something wrong between you and Mom?" I didn't lie. I said, "We're working through something. But I'm here. Always." Jenna avoided Emily after that. She couldn't look her in the eye. That told me everything. Daniel, surprisingly, didn't disappear. I thought he'd bolt the moment things got uncomfortable. But no, he leaned in. I saw the messages. "He's trying to control you. We'll get through this. You deserve better." Typical predator rhetoric. Inflate her sense of victimhood. Feed her delusion that she was the wounded party. I almost admired his consistency. But she wasn't responding like before. Her messages became short, hesitant. No more hearts. No more, "I miss you." Maybe the weight of reality was catching up. Or maybe, just maybe, the fantasy didn't taste the same now that it was exposed to sunlight. I didn't need to interfere. I let it rot. In parallel, I finalized the legal steps. My attorney was meticulous. We filed for divorce citing infidelity with full supporting evidence. We submitted my custody petition complete with letters from Emily's teachers, a report from my therapist, and the file Marcus had prepared. It was a fortress. I didn't want to destroy Jenna financially, but I made sure the settlement reflected the truth. She had violated trust repeatedly and methodically. I offered a fair split of assets, but with one condition: she would have no legal right to make decisions regarding Emily's education or health. She could have scheduled visitations, holidays, but not authority. Her lawyer pushed back. Mine didn't blink. When Jenna saw the documents, she cried again, but not for me. She cried for control. The image she had of herself, a loving wife, a smart professional, a good mom, it was fading. And now she was being documented, defined, and evaluated in legal terms. Her life was no longer a story she controlled. It was a case file. But I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. There was nothing joyful about any of it. At night, I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, remembering the early days. The road trips. The time we built Emily's crib together. The first time Jenna cried in front of me, back when her tears felt like truth, not strategy. I didn't hate her. I hated what she became. Or maybe what I never noticed before. One evening, I found her in the kitchen, staring blankly at the fridge. She didn't see me at first. "Are you scared?" I asked softly. She turned slowly, startled. "Yes," she said. "Every day." I nodded. "Good." It wasn't cruel. It was clarity. Because fear is what keeps you honest after you've broken everything else. That night, I took down the framed wedding photo from the hallway. Slid it quietly into a box in the garage. I didn't smash it. I didn't burn it. I didn't need to. The damage was already done. All that was left now was the ending. The day we went to court, the sky was overcast. Fitting, I thought. Not stormy, not dramatic, just gray. Quiet. Like a verdict that had already been written. Jenna sat on the bench beside her lawyer, composed but pale. Her hands trembled slightly, but she tried to hide it by clasping them in her lap. She was wearing a light gray blazer, like she was dressing for a job interview. In a way, she was. Only this time, she wasn't applying for a position, she was defending what little credibility she had left. I felt nothing. Not rage. Not sadness. Not even closure. Just focus. Everything was in place. My attorney walked in calm and prepared. Our documentation was ironclad. Evidence, timelines, witness statements, behavioral records. I didn't just want to win, I wanted there to be no room for questions. We didn't scream. We didn't fight. We sat. We answered. We waited. The judge reviewed the materials, took breaks, asked a few pointed questions, especially about Emily. Jenna tried to speak gently when her turn came, tried to paint herself as a mother who had simply made emotional mistakes. She teared up on cue, glanced at me a few times, hoping I'd look back. I didn't. I kept my eyes on the judge. By noon, the recommendations were made. Full custody to me with structured visitation for Jenna, contingent on family therapy and psychological evaluation. Shared assets divided per agreement with oversight on Jenna's financial withdrawals due to recent inconsistencies in fiduciary behavior. She didn't lose everything, but she lost what mattered: control, trust, and image. Outside the courthouse, she tried to follow me. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I turned. "We just did," I said. "Through lawyers. Through years. Through everything you decided mattered more than us." She flinched but didn't speak. Just stood there, arms folded, shrinking in on herself. "I didn't know what I was doing," she whispered. I looked at her for the first time, not like a man looking at a woman he loved, but like a stranger studying the wreckage of a house he used to live in. "You did," I said. "You just didn't care." And I walked away. I drove home alone. No music. Just the hum of the engine and the faint buzz of my phone, which I ignored. I parked, stepped inside, and found Emily sitting at the table working on a science project. She looked up and smiled. "Hey, Dad." That smile? It was the only thing I needed. "Hey, Em." I helped her glue cardboard panels together, listened as she explained the phases of the moon. And in that moment, the courtroom, the pain, the lies, they all faded. Not vanished. Just shrunk. Because the truth was simple, I hadn't lost a wife. I had just removed a mask. And underneath it? There was nothing I wanted to hold onto. I didn't announce the outcome to friends. Didn't post anything. No celebration, no revenge victory laps. What needed to happen had happened. Quietly. Completely. That night, I slept. For the first time in what felt like years, I didn't dream of betrayal. I dreamed of nothing. And that was everything. It's strange how quiet the world becomes when the noise of betrayal finally fades. Not silence, clarity. For months, even years, my mind had been crowded with doubt, suspicion, pain, and planning. But now there was space. Room to breathe. To exist without defense. Jenna moved out 2 weeks after the court ruling. She didn't make a scene. She came while Emily was at school. She packed slowly, methodically, like someone folding up a life they knew they'd never get back. I didn't watch her go. I didn't help. That part of me, the one that would have held the door open for her, was long gone. She left a note on the counter. "I hope one day you'll remember more than just the end." I read it once. Then I put it through the shredder. Because the end wasn't what defined her. She did. Emily adapted faster than I expected. Kids are resilient in a way that both inspires and breaks your heart. She had questions, of course. She cried. She got quiet at times. But little by little, the rhythm returned. We created new routines, breakfasts with music, weekly movie nights, school projects with too much glitter. She started smiling again. Not the forced one she wore during the chaos. The real one. The kind that reached her eyes. And me? I started living again. I went back to painting. Nothing fancy, just canvases in the garage, windows open, music playing. I reconnected with old friends. I ran a 10K. I took Emily camping, just the two of us, and we sat under the stars, wrapped in blankets, talking about planets and fears and dreams. I didn't date. Not yet. I wasn't healing to be ready for someone else. I was healing to come back to myself. To become whole again, not as a husband, not as a father, but as a man who remembered who he was before lies made him question it. Jenna still sends messages sometimes. Updates about Emily. Occasionally something more, an apology without saying sorry, a memory without context, an open door disguised as reflection. I never answer. Not out of bitterness, but out of peace. Some doors, once closed, stay closed. And I needed that closure to be real. Because when someone spends years choosing themselves over you and you finally choose you, it's not selfish. It's survival. I'm not the same man I was when this story began. I don't think I ever will be. I'm better. Not because of what she did, but in spite of it. Not because I hurt her back, but because I stopped letting her hurt me. And if there's anything I want Emily to learn from all of this, it's this. You never owe loyalty to someone who uses your love as a weapon. Love should build, not break. And in the quiet of this new chapter, in the stillness after the storm, I found something I didn't expect to feel again. Peace.